Okay, I am joined by the judges, the TOs of the LVO Old World event that happened just a few weeks ago now, and they wanted to, as I've been told, spread the good word, which is the occasion that we've all come together. I'm joined by Dylan. How are you doing, Dylan?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you. Yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. Andy, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having us on your show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming on, and Kevin as well. How are you today, Kevin?
Wonderful. It's great to have us.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, I think we had a bit of a chat before the show went live, so I thought it'd be good to sort of get the same background that you've given me, Andy. You gave a great monologue. If you want to talk about sort of why you're so passionate about spreading the goodwill of the old world, as you said, obviously you were saying the lead in from basically the end of seventh, you weren't particularly pleased with the direction that the game went, and Old World coming back has given you a new lease of interest in a square-based game.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I was very worried. So the past 8 years before Old World was released, I was doing a competitive 40K, and I was enjoying it. And I was kind of getting into the thick of things, and I was enjoying and took on 10th edition 40K. And in the back of my mind, we all knew that Old World was coming back. We knew Warhammer Fantasy Battle was coming back, and that's like not only my favorite Games Workshop game, that's my favorite game. So um, I was hoping that it would be good, but I also had worried. I worried that it would be 8.5 edition, and I thought 8.5 didn't hit all the marks that we enjoyed. I started playing Old World in third edition. I think I was 16 years old in high school with my friends in my parents' garage, and so this was like one of our best things that we did in our high school years, besides like playing sports and uh, but so some of my fondest memories of my old friends and I are in my parents' garage playing Warhammer. And so having it come back, we were all kind of worried that it might be bad, But what came about was, I mean, it's not a perfect game, but it felt more like a love letter to a bunch of the different editions that they try to pull in. Maybe they didn't have all the time and resources, but they really tried to pull in some of the things that we loved about the game and bring it back to us. And so when that happened, we were all excited, and I was like, and after I read the basic rule book for the first time, I thought, oh my god, I don't think I'll ever play 40K again. And I was really like, oh man, what am I going to do here? So because limited time, I have a family, a job that takes a lot of time from me too as well. So it's like you only have time for real one game that you can be passionate about, and so I kind of just jumped right back in, dusted off the miniatures, and then I thought to myself, because always in the back of my mind when we were doing these really cool events for 40K, like going to Worlds, going to Grand Narratives, going to like the FLG events in the States, I thought, shoot, I really wish that we had this for Warhammer Fantasy. I really wish Fantasy survived and we had this. And now I think that we can gradually maybe build that. Uh, with the old world, and so that was kind of my goal, you know. And I was like, okay, so how do we do that? How do we build the community? How do we build on what we have with Old World? Because I think it's good enough to have, and it deserves a community. It deserves, large events. It deserves everything that AOS and 40K have today. And so that was kind of what was in the back of my mind when we kind of took on this past year of the FLG events and helping out FLG. And I think Dylan and I both were in the ears of FLG from the very get go, from January, February, saying, "Hey, you got to bring Old World to your events. You got to do it. This is not going away. This is good. This is a good game, and and it's also practical. You don't need huge amounts of terrain like you do with the 40K tables, and you can put up an event with stuff that they may even already have. So old woods and old hills and things like that. Hey, just pull it out of your basement and let's do it. So that was kind of the thing that started it all for us this past year.
Perfect. Yeah. Obviously, when you say FLG, you're referring to Frontline Gaming, which is, as we were talking about before the show, it's an organization started by two people, basically at a time when Games Workshop were incredibly hands off and they weren't putting any effort, especially into the tournament scene, but they weren't really putting any effort into community building or anything like that. And they built up across America, which we now have the ITC, which is basically the main scoring system across tournaments that's used globally. You know, if you've got rankings, you're going to be looking at the ITC rankings effectively, which I believe comes from them, or at least they work hand in hand with. And you said that obviously you've been working with them. Have you been at all of their tournaments? Do you run Old World at all of the Frontline Gaming tournaments?
We kind of for this past year, we kind of like hit on the tournaments that were like the easiest for us to go to, and the ones that we were most familiar with. We're all in California. I'm originally from Los Angeles, where Kevin is. Where Kevin and I played a lot of Sixth Edition when we were roommates together in his college years, my early years in visual effects, and then I met Dylan because he was part of the Frontline Gaming community, part of their group, and he was the one who was given the task to actually be the main tournament organizer for the Bay Area Open, which is our biggest Frontline Gaming event in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so we kind of committed on the Bay Area Open, the Southern California Open, and the Las Vegas Open, because those are kind of like the ones that we would have gone to anyway. And so most familiar with, and I'd love to do more with them, or at least work with more of their TOs to do the other events too. And I'd love to see every one of their events have Old World.
Yeah.
So, but as of now, it's just those three that we've been working on.
3 for the first year is pretty good. That's not too shabby at all, and always room to expand. So great to hear sort of the why, the how, the where. I think it'd be interesting to get like a quick summary of how you chaps have sort of got into Warhammer, what your brief history is. So Dylan, do you want to start off? How did you get into Warhammer, and how has that led you to here?
So the first time I got into Warhammer, I was probably in the 4th grade, and I walked into a hobby shop.
Yeah.
And I saw the 5th edition Lizardman Army book. And I was like, what's that? It just blew my mind, that artwork. And I was like, I have to have that. I need this book. And then it was several years after that, not until I got into high school, I found a hobby shop where we actually started going. My cousin and I started going. We started with 40K. We both got Space Marines. I got Space Wolves from the 3rd edition cover. It's so funny how so much of the art just evokes something in you. Like, that's what I want to play. That's what I have to have. And then luckily that same shop also played Warhammer Fantasy, so I was able to get back into that. And then I played 6th, 7th, 8th. I played in a lot of competitive events. I don't know if you remember the Ard Boys stuff, where GW actually tried to do like really like no holds barred tournaments, and it just wasn't really good. So did a lot of that stuff. And of course they got rid of Fantasy, and I wasn't a big fan of some of the AOS stuff from the 1st edition. Like, going from, hardcore rank and flank, and you see these rules where if you have a beard, you can like re-roll a dice. I'm like, what?
A little bit of a shock to the system going from Fantasy to Age of Sigmar. Yeah, I think so.
So I will say they've definitely made improvements on it, because a lot of people really enjoy that game, so I'm not going to say anything about that. But then I just got into like a lot of hardcore tournament scene for 40K, and I would actually travel around with the group, and we'd hit up like all the tournaments. And so I was actually on Team Zero Comp for a while, which is Frontline Gaming's personal in-house team. And then there's a announcer named Paul Murphy. I'm currently on his 40K team, which is the Wrong Way Kids. And then, I moved out to California. I kept bugging them when I saw Old World coming, like like a year and a half, 2 years before it actually launched. They're like, here's some artwork. It's coming one day. That moment, I was emailing like Frankie, which is one of the owners, and it was Kicker, who was like their event organizer. Just day one, I'm like, hey, I want to run this.
Perfect.
Luckily, beforehand, I had run some stuff for Frontline. Like, I actually started their 30K event at the LVO, and I started some other events there. So they already knew I had a track record of running stuff.
Perfect. So when Old World came out, was that sort of a full switch for you, or are you still, fingers in multiple pies, playing multiple games?
So I still paint my 40K stuff, but I haven't played a single game of 10th edition. And the last time I played Ninth was at the Bay Area Open like 2 years ago. So I
So
just don't play it often.
fair to say that Old World's fully got its hooks into you. Then you're
Oh, completely,
fully
yeah.
committed. Fantastic.
Like,
How
if
about?
if it's not on a square, I'm not pushing it on the table.
Hell yeah. How about yourself, Kevin?
Yeah, I started with Hero Quest, which I didn't even realize was a Warhammer game at the time. Back when I was in fifth grade, I thought that was an amazing, miniatures. It was a really cool game. It was a lot of fun. But it wasn't until I met Andy in college that I kind of really discovered a true Warhammer game with fantasy. And I started with Dogs of War. I was right at the very tail end of fifth edition, started sixth. And it was just a lot of fun. I played through six and seven. Um, I think when eight started, I actually bought the rule book for eight, but I was right around then when I started to get married and have kids and stuff. And as Andy mentioned, you all of a sudden you needed a lot more miniatures, and so I actually didn't really play eight because it was just kind of too much. And I figured, well, I'll wait for the next round. And unfortunately, the next round it took a long time. So I was really excited to see it come back.
Great, fantastic. And then yourself, Andy?
Oh God. So yeah, we were. I think I was a freshman in high school, and I met a group of kids in some of my classes that were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I liked role playing games at that time. And so we had kind of amassed a bit of a collection of miniatures, and we went into our local comic book hobby store, and I saw these incredible art books, which I thought they were just art books at first. So that when I finally got to close to them and saw them, they were the Warhammer. I think it was like maybe the second edition, but it was the hardbound version of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and it was also the third edition hardbound copy of Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And so I picked both of those up as soon as I saved enough money to buy them. And shortly after, that's when Rogue Trader came out. So, those three books were kind of like, some of my most coveted pieces in my library that I continue every year to go look through all the artwork, and they were better than anything on the market. Absolutely better than anything on the market. The art from the old John Blanche images, I still to this day look back on as reference for things that I'm doing in my career. So it's fantastic work, and so that alone kind of locked me into buying Games Workshop stuff. And then after playing the game, using the miniatures that I had from Blood Bowl and AD&D, and then playing a few games, I was like, oh my God, this is something much better than role playing. This is something much more fantastic and much more dynamic, and tells these stories that we never really captured through our role playing games. And so it just had it's hooked on us back in the late 80s, and so we were determined, and it was really hard because I'm not sure how long you've been in the area you're in, but it was really hard for us in Los Angeles and California to actually get Games Workshop models. So we had to do whatever we could to get the distributors to carry some of the models, and we got some of the old regiments of renown. And so we each picked a race, a faction, and we started collecting those factions from the regiment of renown boxes, all pewter. Probably back then they were lead, but and there was a Warhammer Armies box set which had it had plastic elves, and plastic dark elves, and plastic goblins, plastic dwarves, and so I saw this at another hobby store. My dad would drive us around to different hobby stores to kind of find these small pieces of treasure, and so I bought four of them, and then I split it up amongst our game group, and so we had a bunch of plastics too. So that kind of led to this, this whole adventure. So early on was just trying, and we learned every unit so well because it was so hard just to get that unit put together. So by the time we earned enough money to buy those miniatures and put that unit together, we were masters of that unit, whether it be dark elf crossbowmen, or repeater crossbowmen, or high elf cavalry, or so. And so we just continued throughout our, and I'm still friends with those guys back from back in high school, and they're part of the community still, and so we just continued throughout our lives. Like we took breaks here and there for college and for life. Life happens, and you don't have enough time to do that hobby. But yeah, I think it's the longest thing I've ever been really doing is
Sure.
Warhammer. So it was really heartbreaking when they killed it, and it's been such a great experience having it back.
Yes, no, absolutely, it's been fantastic. Obviously, I got back into the game when 40k was the sort of main game, and Fantasy had died. And since Old World's come back, I've also not really played any 40k at all. Fully on the square base train now. We're at the station pulling away. So great, we've got some background. What about the lead-in? Because there's a lot of prep that goes into an event. And when I say prep, one of the things I noticed, there is a 16-page FAQ. So you've been pretty thorough with trying to make sure everything runs as smoothly as possible. So walk me through, how does it start getting from A to B, where you're running an event at one of the biggest gaming events in the world for tabletop gaming?
I think the start was Dylan being able to have that connection to Frontline Gaming, and to be able to pull off the Bay Area Open, and then kind of reaching out to us about how he just needed more backup. He just needed more people on this to run like SoCal and to run the LVO. And so Dylan kind of leading the charge was integral into us being able to do this. And so I think FLG, even though they were my friends, I'd never proven that I could do anything like this for them, or that we could do anything like this for them. So we had no connection to them in that way. But Dylan had pulled off 30K tournaments. He'd pulled off multiple events at LVO and other, and he'd been part of their team. So, so I think Dylan was like the first person to get us involved in it, and thankfully. And then I also, so people used to come and play. My friends used to come and play at my parents' garage, and I was always the rules guy. I was always the one putting on the events. I was always the one hosting. So throughout life, I'd run Mighty Empires campaigns. I'd run events at local game stores. I've worked with different local game stores to host, events. I had multiple tables worth of terrain that I bought in like the 90s. So I was I was involved in the background, but I really wanted to help out. And so I think the biggest driving force for us was that, or at least for me, I was seeing people like you, and seeing people like Val, who had also been part of the FLG kind of group, and Rob with the square-based stuff, kind of slowly gaining momentum. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a thing, and so let's make it a thing, right? So I said, okay, how can we test out everything that I'd like to do, or maybe I can convince Dylan that this is a good way of doing things, and we test it out at the SoCal Open, and then from the SoCal Open we'll take what we learned, and we'll do the Las Vegas Open, and we'll try to get as many tables as we possibly can for these players. And so one of the biggest driving forces was Dylan contacted me. And Dylan, do you want to talk about this, about what happened with Games Workshop?
Yeah, so it was the initial run for LVO, because FLG partners with Games Workshop, they were going to supply us with prize support. Some of the specialist design team may have come over, but the only caveat is you can't have legacy factions. And it took us all of 5 minutes to say no, thank you. We're gonna have legacy factions.
Sure.
So we basically had to do everything from scratch. Luckily, in our gaming group, we have a Google engineer who loves spreadsheets. And he volunteered his time. He's like, "Hey, I'll help you make the spreadsheet for all this FAQ." And we're like, "Oh, thank God, that's amazing," because that is some tedious stuff to do. And then we kind of just went off. We saw that Val and his square-based system was doing really well. And so we liked that train set up, and we liked a lot of the things about their FAQ. We just had more to add to it, and there's a few things that we changed on our own. And so I want to say that was a solid week to 10 days of us just getting together at nights and going over rules, having disputes, contemplated them. Because there's a few things in our FAQ I don't agree with, but I was outvoted. So I'm like, all right, that's how we're going to rule it, guys.
I mean, I
And
think that our whole thought was that there's going to be people coming from all over the country, all over the world. And so even more so than some of our other events, the LVO, we really wanted to have an FAQ that even if not everyone agreed with every rule, that at least there was a baseline that they would understand how the rules would be done at that event.
yeah, and they say that every good compromise leaves everyone unhappy. So it's good to hear that even in terms of writing the FAQ, you've got different perspectives coming in, because I think that gives a better approach, and you end up with a better overall product if you've got lots of different angles to look at things from. So that's, I think, quite positive.
Oh,
So
100%. And I want to say there was only like, what, 3 or 4 things that came up that we didn't cover. So we're like, oh, that's really good.
that is good, yeah, because there's always going to be stuff. It's amazing to the things that people can come up with. And let's just talk about the big one that people might have heard about. So there is a combination that theoretically works, but I believe was ruled not to work at your event. Whereas the Bretonian item, the is it called the Spike Shield?
Yeah.
When your opponent makes an attack against a Bretonian model that holds the shield and rolls a 1 to either hit or wound, or maybe even an armor save. It might just be hit and wounds. They take a strength 3 AP1 hit. However, if that model has Monster Slayer and Killing Blow from the Virtue of Heroism, in theory that would apply to those hits. And how did you rule that when it came up?
So that had to be a quick snap ruling because it was on one of the higher top tables, and they were like getting through their turns quick. The main thing that went through my mind, because I think I'm the first one to make the ruling, was 1, not all hits are attacks. I don't remember the page in the rule book where it says that, but that is something it says. And then also, you can't use magic weapons when you're using this. And yes, I get it. The shield's not a magic weapon, but it's still a magic item. So it just completely kind of went against the grain of what the other rules trying to do. So we just said no. Then I went over to Andy and Kevin. I'm like, hey, how would you do this? And both of them were like, no, I would have ruled the same way you did. So I'm like, cool.
In general, it seemed intent. Also, it's only a 20-point magic item, which seemed pretty powerful to grant this to. And it's a combination that, again, it felt to us that it wasn't the intent of the game designers to have an item like that do what they were trying to do with it. And we understood that from some interpretations of Raw, you might be able to argue it, but we felt it didn't really work that way. And from a balance perspective, we also felt it didn't necessarily need to be working that way either.
Sure. Obviously, it's on one of the better armies in the game, so it's not like they need a helping hand. And,
yeah, right now the Exiles have a 64.5% win rate. Right, so like if they're complaining about that, they're a real like Val would say a nut buster.
Yeah, I'm not sure anyone was complaining about it, which is good.
To speak to it too, the guy who ended up not using that item, and we let him change it out. He took a yellow card for changing it out, which just meant that if he had issues throughout the tournament, he could potentially get kicked out of the tournament, which didn't happen because he actually ended up winning best general the whole tournament. So even after not getting to use that for the rest of the tournament, he still performed just fine without it.
Yes. Yeah.
But we're definitely interested in talking to members of the community to see their take as well. A lot of this stuff, I'd rather not. I'd rather us not do this in a vacuum.
Sure.
So that's why I'm in constant communication with Val and with Blue from Square Hammer, and it's like I wanted to make sure that like this is a community-driven thing, and to some degree, we have people who are running like large events that we all kind of stay on the same page. So if somebody wants to come to the Las Vegas Open who's been playing in Australia or who has been playing in Canada or who has been playing in the UK, that pretty much probably about 90% of the game is the same. That and that anything that is different is called out early on so that they can make adjustments early on to their list. And I don't want to be Games Workshop. I really don't. I really feel after our session, it really felt like, oh my God, this is an unrewarding job that they have, to do this FAQ. And after FAQ, version 1.3, I was like, oh my God. And it's hard too, because it's like you really have to put some time and effort. It actually should be somebody's job at the studio, to do this, because it was really tough. I think we were putting in some long hours, and we're volunteers, so this isn't like we're getting paid to do this. This is just because we want to see the community grow and have a way for us to all be on the same page, whether we're not playing the same scenarios, or whether Rob's setting up some river scenarios, whatever you guys are doing. That's great. I think everybody should be creative and come up with different ways to play the game, but I think we should all be using practically the same amount of rules, the same rules. That's what my hope would be, so that like you can come from anywhere that's playing this game to one of our tournaments, and you wouldn't be like really taken aback by the way in which we're playing the game.
I think the base support the Game Workshop is giving as well. If you look at how things were in the old days, 6th, 7th, 8th, there wasn't really any support. The way the game got changed was, oh, your army sucks? That's a shame. You might get a new book next edition. So obviously we are seeing, I don't want to call it regular game support, because it is less regular than we've got in terms of 40k, AOS, the main game studio games. But we are seeing active support there, which is nice. So it feels like, while it is obviously good to have the community tie up the 16 pages of rules that need clarifying, at least they are addressing things, and hopefully having resources like this gives them something to look at and know which direction to go in when things do come up. And obviously people do need to keep emailing in when they've got any questions, so they can keep slowly fixing them, but fixing them.
How have you guys been doing it in Nottingham? Are you guys using the same square-based FAQ, unofficial FAQ that Rob is doing at like the SBOT Toronto, or?
So the SBOT FAQ is more a collaboration between Val and Shane, who's the head judge of the SBOT events. And then obviously Rob does weigh in on those. But then in Nottingham, it's not necessarily that we use the same full strict one. It's a bit of a shorter rules pack, but when the events are smaller, it's a lot easier to get TO attention to just be like, oh no, this is how this works out. So we don't necessarily have as cut and dry of a process, but it's also not much of a problem, because it's super easy just to shout up. Rob's usually within 5 meters of you, so it's not difficult to get his attention.
That's awesome.
And just to speak to it, in general, we look at the raw rule first as we try to look through, unless the raw rule felt really awkward. And then we might look at like a rule that is intended to see what that kind of like would be. And then it was still kind of vague. Then we'd oftentimes look towards legacy. How did past editions deal with similar things?
Sure.
And it was only then we maybe would look towards a game balance kind of perspective. It was still really, it could go either way,
Yeah, that makes sense, because the rules as intended versus rules as written argument, I usually fall towards the rules as written side of things, purely because I've been playing this game for long enough that I know that the way that me and maybe 90% of the world sees Games Workshop games isn't necessarily always the way that Games Workshop sees the games. When they come out with some clarifications, you go, that is interesting. So it's always difficult for me to say, oh well, they definitely intended this interaction to go. But it is good to have a document to outline and make sure that we're all sort of on the same page. So how did you feel about the event? How did it go? Did it run smoothly? Did you find it was an overall positive experience?
Oh God, yeah, I thought it ran much smoother than I thought it would be.
Great.
I had nightmares of like kept me up at night thinking about things that could possibly happen, and I think the whole community just came out. I think everybody wanted this to happen, and we had people who had to drop from the event because of certain things. There were fires in Los Angeles, and a lot of the people that we invited were from the Los Angeles region, but people still showed up to just help. So we had just volunteers that were helping us helping us, with things. So it never felt like it was completely as overwhelming that I thought it might be. and that allowed me to kind of do PR work and just talk to people about like maybe doing more streaming of Old World on their channels. Um, so it was like it was really nice. It was really nice to kind of reach out to the community and to try to expand upon what we're doing here, and then also to use this event as something that we can say, hey, look at, we did this. Now let's try to do whatever we can next, right? Like doubling or tripling our numbers next year. How do we do that? Creating more RTTs, local RTTs across the nation, standardizing things or helping people so that like we can expand this game. So that was really cool because I thought I was just going to be locked in there, but Dylan and Kevin did such an incredible job. One of the biggest things that was kind of like we didn't realize, or maybe I didn't realize, or maybe I didn't realize how badly it would scale. But so we did a lot of the games days and the GTs during the 2000s for 6th edition in Los Angeles. And one of the great things about the GTs that we engaged in Los Angeles was that, unlike 40K, there you not only got points for like your differential for your scoring, but you also got points for your sportsmanship, and you got points for your hobby, your painting skills, and your theme of your army. And so the winners of the GTs back then were the overall winners, kind of like these Renaissance men who could, or women who could, not only bring a beautifully painted army, but also can win with it, right? And have a good theme. And so I kind of wanted to bring that back. So we introduced some of the old school player scoring, where at the end of your battle, you would score your opponent for sportsmanship, for for their army composition, for their army, for their look of the army, for their painting skills, as well as them getting points for playing the game. So inputting all that in to a spreadsheet for 70 players was a lot harder than it was for like 20 players. So in the future, we definitely want to come up with a digital solution for that. But I felt that it was really, really important to have people also weigh in on their opponents, sportsmanship. And in the end, you get a player. The thing that I was sick of is I was, taking like my beautifully painted armies that I'd spent so much time on to 40K tournaments and playing a guy who just did 3-color minimum. And I was like, this is not the hobby that I want to engage in. And so I kind of really wanted to bring it back, so that a big portion of this was going to be about the hobby, about your sportsmanship. So when you play a player on the top table, he's not going to only be a top player. He's going to have a beautiful army, and he's going to be someone you'd want to invite to your house and play another game with. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I'm in favour of obviously having sportsmanship as part of the tournament. So just to clarify, you did have sort of a best general for the person who came. Yes, yeah, because I think normally when you get that sort of pushback, it's because people are like, oh well, I just want to be the best at playing the game, and there is still recognition for that. But then you've also got the best overall. And am I right in thinking that you said that the same person won best overall and best general? Is that correct?
No, they didn't.
No.
Oh, okay.
It was actually kind of surprising to me because I thought that's how it was going to go. But after the last game, I think, or last couple of games, the sportsmanship score made all the difference. And so the best overall went to somebody who came in maybe 10th.
Okay.
I think he came in 10th in as far as his scoring, 4-2. And it was something that we kind of talked about over and over again, is how are we gonna like create this best overall score. And I went with the way that that the GTs of old Games Workshop did, and we did a combination of the differential point score as 50%, and then the paint and sportsmanship as another 50%. So
So I
that
do want to
led,
chime in. Even though he came in 10th, he was still number 1 in battle points, so he wasn't like doing bad either.
Yep. Yeah, he was doing great, and then he also had a really high sportsmanship score and a really high paint score. So it was surprising to me when you guys told me who it was, and because I thought for sure the person who was going to win best general looked like he was going to win, but the person who won best general also won best paint. So, but we decided to tell him that, and he was like, graciously said I only need one award.
That's nice.
And and then I thought, yeah, in the future we probably should only offer one award to whoever wins, like if they win 2 awards. And he did so great. So it was like it was awesome. And FLG made a mistake, and our best general trophy was actually the nicest trophy. So he ended up getting the nicest trophy for the event. So I was happy about that too.
Fantastic. All right, so it sounds like everything's gone great. You got 70 players. Obviously, you were planning on having more. There were logistical issues. Obviously, natural disasters in your area. It's hard to overcome. Honestly, the fact that you got 70 players is pretty incredible. What's the future? What's next? What's the next event that you're going to be going to or holding?
So it's really cool because I've I've helped or was a part of multiple League of Many Gamers paint leagues, and so just recently, this past year, I can convince my local game store to help me run a League of Many Gamers paint league, and we ended up having almost 24 players. So it's the biggest League of Many Gamers paint league like I've ever had in the history of my League of Many Gamers paint leagues, and so we just finished that. And a lot of those players were at the LVO when they had finished 2,000 points, even though they were only supposed to finish 1,500 points of painted armies. They had finished 2,000 points of painted armies. They wrote lore for their armies. They did bespoke pieces of terrain for their armies. They did display boards for their armies. So it's just been incredible, the community presence and the amount of work that the community has been putting in. So I'm working currently with 6 different TOs in my region, and I'm trying to make sure that we have uh, monthly RTTs, and I'm also doing an invite only GT. Like 4 minutes from my house at a community center, like a church community center. So it's like it's been a very very busy, very very busy amount of very busy time for us. So it's like we don't even have time to catch our breath, and we're on to that next event, next event, next event. And so I think that
Oh,
the
we already signed
people,
up for BAO 2 for Old War.
Yeah,
yeah,
that I would say is the next big one, where that's more of a wider community one, where we're hoping to get a really good turnout.
Mm.
That's in May, Memorial Day weekend in the U.S., which is I think the last or second to last weekend in May.
Yeah, last weekend of May.
Up in the Bay Area. So I think we had 25 people last year, and I think we're hoping to at least double that this year. So uh, yeah, and that's hopefully it'll be a great turnout. And hope a lot of people who came to LVO from other places will turn out for that one too.
so get your
Perfect.
tickets, get your tickets.
Is that the Bay Area Open? You said is
The Bay Area
next one?
Open.
Yeah, cool. I'll put a link down in the description if you are interested in going to the Bay Area Open for Old World. You'll be able to find the tickets and more information down below. And what's the sort of roadmap then? So that's the next big.
International airport right there, Edward. So just come on over.
Unfortunately, I am currently. I've been calling it fun employed. I'm between jobs. I'm doing some side work, but it's not go international travel to go to events at the moment. Unfortunately, as much as I'd love to, I've got a few on my calendar that I'm sadly crossing off as I get closer to them.
Hopefully
Maybe next year, or maybe
we'll
by
have
LVO,
options.
because it's LVO's been one that I've wanted to go to for years, obviously from a 40k perspective. But I'm not playing 40k now, and you're saying I heard a great tagline before we went live, where I think you said you wanted to double the amount of attendees for 2026 LVO. So, well, if there's going to be 210 players there, it'd be a shame if I wasn't one of them.
Right,
Sure.
you have to be one of them. You have to be one of them.
Fantastic. So we've got Bay Area Open because obviously Frontline Gaming do have their flagship events.
Sure.
Just what's the next one that you're at over the course of the year? What's the
SoCal is in October. That's
Yep.
the next one, assuming we don't add additional ones.
Sure.
So the current 3 that Frontline Gaming does is Bay Area Open that we have in May, SoCal, which is near San Diego, in October, and then LVO, obviously Vegas in January.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And just to kind of set ourselves apart from Frontline Gaming, we made our own little group called Monster Slayer Productions, and so as we team with different people around the world, we want to make sure that people know that it's us who's coming to their event and helping host their event, and what to expect from that. So I talk a lot with Mike McIntyre from Old World Legends, and I believe you're in his online league currently that's going on with Warhol. And so it's like, we want to team with him. We'd like to team with other people, and just keep growing the events and keep growing the community and making sure that everything runs smoothly and offering up anything that we've learned from running the events we run, and offer up any skills that we have. So like Kevin and I are in the film industry, and so Kevin is a producer and I'm a visual effects supervisor, visual effects artist. So things that we can bring to them from from our point of view. We also have Miles, who's a Google designer, and we have Fiona, who's also a product manager. And so we have a good group of people. And then Dylan, just who has the experience that none of us did. And so, we have a good group of people working on this and passionate about this. And so if we can lend a helping hand to anybody who wants to run or organize an event, we'd love to do that too. So
fantastic. And what's the best way for people to get in contact with you if they are interested or have questions?
I think that's a good question. What do you think, Kevin? I think we do have our website. Maybe we should put a page.
Our website. We'll add a little spot there for people to send in questions on there.
We'll give you Andy's personal cell phone number.
Yeah, go for it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So down below, I will put a link to the website. In the time between recording and this video going up, I'm sure there'll be some sort of get in touch with us page, and I will put Andy's mobile number down below as well. So if you've got any burning questions, or if you really just hate Bretonians and you're upset that Bretonians won the event, you can give him a ring and let him know personally.
I did my best. I did my best.
Just very quickly, I thought there was a decent amount of what's the word I'm looking for? Variance in the top 10. You did have Bretonians, you got Warriors of Chaos. You'd expect to see those. High Elves, I think High Elves are doing better across the pond than they are over here.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah,
great.
There's not many people doing well with Dark Elves. In fact, I can count them on one hand usually.
I think he came in 6th or something. Yeah,
fifth, top 5. So absolute incredible stuff from Filippo. Huge shout out. Obviously, a Dark Elf player myself. Super pleased to see that. But then we also had, there's a Beastman player in there as well. So there's a decent amount of variance. And something that I've noticed is that while people are playing the good stuff, they are also just playing the stuff that they like, and it's good to see there is at least some variety in there, not just the usual 1-2 that you'd see.
Yeah, I was really happy with that. One of my favorite armies is my Dark Elves, and so it was really crushing when the whole Legacy faction thing came out, and so I think that was one of the earliest videos that I saw of Square Base when they were talking about Renegade factions and how they were going to keep playing them. And then, I don't know if you know Lawrence Baker from Tabletop Tactics, but he was talking about how the community is just not paying attention and they're still going to play all the legacy armies. I was like, good, let's just continue doing this. And maybe at some point they bring them back for us. Because, it's like some of us have collected these for 30 years. I have like 3 versions of Dark Elf armies from 3rd edition, 5th edition, and then 7th. So I'm not about to burn them.
No, absolutely. Well, hopefully we will see more of that coming in subsequent editions, because we're right at the start. It's a fresh start. We're back here. We're a year in. I think things are looking very positive. I think it's been, as Warhammer editions go, this has been one of the smoother ones for the first year. I think it's fair to say things are definitely trending in a direction. They are making improvements. We know there's new stuff coming. I'm very excited to see where that goes over the next few years. But thank you so much for joining me. Before we go, is there anything else that you want to touch on that we didn't cover?
I just want real quick that we've never had this many army books in a year in Warhammer Fantasy either.
Yeah, every 3 months a release schedule. Incredible.
And that's just 2 guys in Specialist Games pumping all that stuff out.
I would just like to thank the additional sponsorship we got, because as it was mentioned, we didn't get sponsorship officially with Games Workshop. But we had a number of hobby suppliers sponsor us. We had Mind Hobbies sponsor us, which was stuff. Gamergraph sponsored us. Tooth and Coat sent us a little bit of stuff. Frontline Gaming obviously did. We even had one of our players who's a doctor. Jamil. He wanted to put forth money. He doesn't even play Legacy. He was like insulted that they were gonna like say we couldn't use them. So he was like, "I'm gonna put money in." So it was just amazing the support we got.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I just wanted
thank Baron of Dice too.
oh yeah,
Baron of
Baron of
Dice.
Dice.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you and people who are like you out there, who are, pillars of the community, who are doing the work. Like, you may not have a job, but this is a job, and you're, doing this work to make sure that people have something to watch every day. Some new information about Old World, and keeping it alive, and that's something we didn't have, and I think that is something that's definitely necessary to keep us growing.
Very kind of you to say. Well, thank you all for coming on. And if you are interested in the Bay Area Open, again, tickets will be in the description down below, along with the Contact Us page and Andy's personal phone number. Catch you around. Thank you for watching. Thank you for getting to the end of the video. If you've reached this point and you haven't already, I would really appreciate a like, a comment, a subscription if you haven't done those things. It just helps me get seen by more people, boost me up in the algorithm, all of the stuff that the YouTubers do like to say. If you would like to support me in my goal to become a full-time YouTuber, I would absolutely appreciate that. You can become a member below. There are various perks to those, name at the end of the videos, all that good stuff, but it also unlocks some VIP areas in Discord if you become a Longbeard or Ground Knight tier supporter. Those VIP sections are the only parts that are locked away in Discord. You don't have to be a member to join the Discord. I'd recommend that you should. We've got about 450, 500 people on there. It's a great place for discussion, a lot of fun. I do try and chime in as much as possible. And it's also where the Fix My List show lists are put. And also, if you are one of the Ground Knight or Longbeard tier supporters, where you participate in choosing which list I play in the monthly Pick My List series.